I sat in the front pew of the church, my hands folded neatly in my lap, staring at the polished mahogany coffin at the altar. My mother was inside, a woman I had spent my entire life trying to impress. A woman who, in the end, had made it painfully clear that I was never enough. Tears pricked at the edges of my vision, but they weren't for grief. They were for closure, the kind I knew I'd never truly get. Beside me, my sister Olivia sniffled dramatically, dabbing at her eyes with a lace-trimmed handkerchief. She always had a way of making everything about her, even now. When the priest finished his final blessing, Olivia let out a soft, pitiful sob and leaned against her husband, Connor, who wrapped a comforting arm around her. She looked perfect, as always. Her designer black dress hugged her figure just right, her blonde curls falling in elegant waves. Even at a funeral, she managed to be the center of attention. I swallowed the lump in my throat and glanced toward the second row, where my aunt and uncle sat stiffly, avoiding my gaze. The same went for the rest of the family. They knew. They all knew. I had prepared myself for what was coming. I had told myself I wouldn't care. But nothing could have prepared me for the lawyer's words after the service. "I'm sorry, Mandy," Mr. Holloway said, adjusting his glasses as he flipped through the pages of my mother's will. "Your parents left everything to Olivia." A cold numbness spread through me. "Everything?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Yes." He hesitated before adding, "Your parents believed you were independent enough and didn't need financial support. Olivia, being a stay-at-home mother, required the assistance more." My nails dug into the fabric of my dress. Olivia had 3 properties, a husband who made 6 figures, and luxury cars parked in her driveway. Yet I, who had worked my way through college, juggled 2 jobs, and never once asked my parents for help, had been deemed unworthy. "That's ridiculous," Aunt Marlene muttered under her breath, finally breaking the tense silence. But Olivia didn't look surprised. She simply let out a delicate sigh, as if this was just another unfortunate burden she had to bear. "I mean, it does make sense," she murmured, placing a hand over mine as if she were offering comfort. "You've always been so independent, Mandy. Mom and Dad just wanted to help me, that's all." "That's all." I pulled my hand away. "You knew, didn't you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She bit her lip. They may have mentioned something before." And there it was. The truth. I wanted to scream, to rage, to demand how even after death my parents still found a way to remind me that I wasn't good enough. But years of being the overlooked daughter had taught me one thing. Anger wouldn't change anything. So instead, I smiled. Because if they thought I was independent before, they had no idea what I was capable of now. I turned to the lawyer. "Thank you for your time," I said smoothly, standing up and gathering my purse. "But I won't be contesting the will." Olivia's brow furrowed. "Wait, you're not mad?" I gave her a long, measured look before tilting my head. "Oh, Liv," I murmured, stepping closer so only she could hear. "I don't need their money." Her shoulders sagged in relief, mistaking my words for surrender. I turned on my heel and walked out of that office with my head held high. What Olivia didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I had already prepared my own final gift for our dear parents. And it would be unforgettable. I wasn't always invisible to my parents. At least, I don't think I was. There must have been a time, maybe when I was a toddler, clutching at my mother's skirt or babbling nonsense to my father, when they saw me. When they really saw me. But as I grew older, the difference between me and Olivia became impossible to ignore. She was the golden child, the cherished daughter who could do no wrong. And me? I was the afterthought. It started small. When Olivia won her first dance recital at age 6, my parents threw a party, complete with a cake shaped like ballet slippers. When I placed first in a spelling bee that same year, my mother patted my head and told me to keep up the good work. When Olivia turned 16, she got a brand new car, wrapped in a big red bow. When I turned 16, I got a used bike. Because you don't really go out much anyway, Mandy. I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need the approval, the admiration, the love. But deep down, it stung. Still, I worked hard. While Olivia breezed through life on charm and parental favoritism, I built something for myself. I worked my way through college with 2 part-time jobs. I landed a stable career in finance. I saved every penny and invested smartly. I never relied on anyone. And yet, in the end, none of it mattered. I sat in my tiny apartment that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying the words over and over in my head. Your parents left everything to Olivia. Of course they did. Why would I expect anything different? My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. A message from Aunt Marlene. Mandy, I just want you to know I think what your parents did was disgusting. You deserve better. A second later, another message appeared. You should fight this. Contest the will. It's not fair. Fair. The word made me laugh. Nothing about my relationship with my parents had ever been fair. I had accepted that a long time ago. But what I couldn't accept was Olivia sitting there, pretending this was just another unfortunate inconvenience for her. Pretending she hadn't known. I didn't want their money. But that didn't mean I wouldn't leave my own mark on their legacy. I pulled open my laptop and logged into my email. There was someone I needed to reach out to. A certain lawyer. A week later, I stood in front of my parents' house. No, Olivia's house now. It still smelled the same. Freshly cut grass, the lingering scent of my mother's lavender perfume embedded in the walls. But it wasn't home anymore. Hadn't been for a long time. Olivia answered the door, her face lighting up with fake surprise. Mandy, I wasn't expecting you. No, of course she wasn't. I need to pick up some things, I said simply. Mom had some personal letters and keepsakes I'd like to have. Olivia hesitated, but then stepped aside, waving me in. Of course, take whatever you need. I walked through the house slowly, memories pressing against me with every step. The living room where I had watched my parents shower Olivia with praise. The dining table where I had once sat in silence while they gushed over her latest accomplishments. I headed toward my father's old study. This was what I had come for. I pulled open the desk drawer, fingers grazing over old documents, notebooks, and letters. And then, I found it. The original copy of my parents' will. I had already seen the one the lawyer had read aloud. But this was different. Because there, on the first page, was a clause that hadn't been in the final document. A clause stating that my parents' estate was supposed to be split evenly between Olivia and me. I let out a slow breath, my fingers tightening around the paper. So Olivia had done more than just accept the favoritism. She had changed the will. I turned, my heart pounding. Olivia stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You weren't supposed to see that, she said, her voice calm, almost bored. I stared at her, waiting for an explanation, a confession, anything. Instead, she just shrugged. Mom and Dad always intended for me to have everything, Mandy. I just made sure their wishes were properly carried out. I had never hated her more. I could have screamed, could have fought, could have marched straight to a lawyer and exposed her for what she'd done. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Thank you for your honesty, I said, my voice steady. That's all I needed to know. And with that, I walked out of the house, already planning my next move. Because Olivia had just made one very big mistake. She thought I would let this go. She thought I was the same girl who had always been overlooked. But she was about to find out just how wrong she was. The truth had been sitting right there, buried in my father's desk, waiting for me to find it. My parents had intended to split their estate between Olivia and me. But Olivia had made sure that never happened. She hadn't just accepted her role as the golden child. She had taken everything, ensuring I walked away with nothing. She thought I would do what I'd always done. Accept it. Swallow it. Move on. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I spent the next week planning. I could have gone straight to a lawyer. could have fought the will in court, but legal battles were messy and slow. And Olivia? She was careful. By now, I had no doubt she had covered her tracks. No, this required something different. Something that would hit her where it really hurt. I just needed the right person to help me. I found him in an old bar downtown, the kind with dim lighting and the faint scent of whiskey soaked into the wooden walls. "Hello, Connor," I said, sliding into the booth across from Olivia's husband. Connor looked up, startled. He wasn't expecting me. Mandy? He frowned, setting down his drink. "What are you doing here?" I folded my hands on the table. "I know about the will." His entire body went still. "What?" I leaned in, keeping my voice low. "I know Olivia changed it. I found the original version in Dad's study. My parents wanted me to have half of everything, but Olivia made sure that didn't happen." Connor let out a slow breath, rubbing a hand over his face. He didn't look surprised. "You knew," I said. It wasn't a question. He sighed. "I had my suspicions." He paused, staring at his glass. "But Olivia? She controls everything. The finances, the house, the accounts. I don't ask questions anymore." Of course he didn't. Olivia had always been the dominant one in their marriage. He was just along for the ride. But I wasn't here to judge Connor. I was here to use him. "Listen," I said, my voice softening. "I don't care about the money. I never have." Connor snorted. "Olivia thinks you do." "Olivia thinks a lot of things," I said, "but she's wrong." I leaned forward. "I don't want her money. I just want her to pay for what she did." Connor studied me for a long moment. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. "God, I'd love to see that," he muttered, shaking his head. "But Olivia, she always wins, Mandy. She's untouchable." "Not this time," I said, because I knew something Olivia didn't, and I was about to use it. Over the next week, I dug deep into Olivia's perfect life. I wasn't interested in her bank statements or her property deeds. I wanted something else, something personal, and it didn't take long to find it. Late one night, scrolling through old social media posts, I saw it. A picture from 3 years ago. A vacation Olivia had taken to Italy with a group of friends. The problem? Connor had never been on that trip. I clicked on the tag names. One stood out. A man named David Carlisle. He wasn't just a friend. He was something much more. I scrolled through his account, clicking through old comments and interactions. And there it was. A thread of flirtatious remarks, inside jokes, late-night messages spanning years. Olivia had been cheating on Connor, and she was sloppy about it. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. This was it. My first move. The beauty of revenge wasn't always in the grand act. Sometimes it was in the subtle unraveling. I drafted a message and sent it to Connor. No words, no explanation, just screenshots. The reply came almost instantly. "Where did you get these?" "Does it matter?" I typed back. "You deserve to know the truth." A long pause. Then, "Meet me tomorrow. We need to talk." I smiled. Checkmate, Olivia. The next evening, I met Connor at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. He was already there when I arrived, hunched over a cup of coffee, staring blankly at the table. The moment he looked up and saw me, I knew. He had seen everything. I slid into the chair across from him, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with something fragile. Anger, disbelief, maybe even relief. "How long?" he finally asked, his voice hoarse. I exhaled. "From what I found, at least 4 years." Connor let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Of course." He picked up his coffee, but his hands were shaking too much to take a sip. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said, and for once I actually meant it. "No, you're not." His eyes locked onto mine. "You wanted me to know. You wanted this to happen." I didn't deny it. "Yes, but only because Olivia deserved to be exposed. She's been playing everyone, Connor. You, me, even my parents, right up until they died. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. And now what? What do you want from me, Mandy? I leaned forward. I don't want your money. I don't want your sympathy. I just want to watch her world fall apart. Connor studied me for a long moment. Then slowly, a small, dark smile curved his lips. You're not the only one. We sat there for nearly an hour, going over every detail. Olivia's manipulations, her lies, the fake will. Connor was angry, but not in a volatile way. No, his anger was colder, controlled. The kind of anger that led to devastation. I want a divorce, he said finally, his voice steady. And I want full custody of the kids. It was a bold move, a calculated strike. Olivia had spent years curating the perfect image, a loving wife, a devoted mother. She needed that image. And Connor? He was about to rip it away from her. The next morning, I watched from a safe distance as Connor's lawyer delivered the divorce papers to Olivia's doorstep. She answered in a silk robe, hair perfectly styled, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. But the moment she saw the envelope, her face twisted into something ugly. I wished I could hear her reaction. The shock, the panic. Instead, I just watched as her fingers tightened around the papers, knuckles white. And then, just for a moment, she glanced around. Not to Connor, not to her kids, but to the neighbors. She cared more about what they thought than the fact that her marriage was crumbling right in front of her. Classic Olivia. I should have walked away after that. Let Connor handle the rest. But I wasn't finished. Olivia still thought she could control the narrative, that she could manipulate her way out of this, the way she always had. She was wrong. That evening, I made sure of it. With a few clicks, I uploaded the proof of her affair. Screenshots, messages, pictures. But I didn't send them to Connor. I sent them to her entire social circle. Her mommy group chats, the charity board members, even the homeowners association. Everyone who mattered to her. The fallout was immediate. Olivia's phone blew up with calls and messages. She tried to deny it at first, tried to spin some kind of misunderstanding, but there was too much evidence. By the next morning, she was a pariah. The friends she had spent years cultivating now wanted nothing to do with her. And for the first time in her life, Olivia was alone. The thing about people like Olivia is that they never believe consequences apply to them. They lie, manipulate, and twist the truth to fit their version of reality. They believe they're untouchable, that no matter what they do, things will always work out in their favor. But not this time. I made sure of that. A week after I sent out the evidence of her affair, Olivia was spiraling. Her once loyal friends had cut her off, the school moms whispering behind her back at drop-offs. The charity board, where she once reigned supreme, had asked her to step down. And worst of all, Connor had moved out, taking the kids with him. She had lost everything. But Olivia wasn't the kind of person to go down quietly. No, she still had one last move to play. I was at work when she called me. I debated ignoring it, letting her stew in the mess she'd made. But something inside me wanted to hear what she had to say. I answered on the third ring. You ruined my life. Her voice was raw, almost unrecognizable. No, Olivia, I said calmly. You did that all on your own. She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you've won? I don't need to win, I replied. I just needed the truth to come out. She was silent for a long moment. Then her voice dropped to something colder. You don't understand, Mandy. You think you've taken everything from me? Fine, but you better watch your back, because I have nothing left to lose. And with that, she hung up. A normal person might have been scared, but I knew Olivia. She was all talk. Still, I wasn't about to let my guard down. Not yet, because Olivia might have lost her reputation, her marriage, and her perfect image. But there was still one thing left. The house. I didn't need the money. but I did need to finish what I started. So I called Connor. "Do you still have the original will?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, confusion in his voice. "Why?" I smiled. "Because it's time to fix what Olivia broke." It took a few more weeks, but eventually my lawyer filed the case. Olivia had fraudulently altered legal documents. A serious crime. There was more than enough proof, and with Connor's statement, she didn't stand a chance. The court ruled in my favor. My parents' original wishes were reinstated, which meant half of everything, including the house, now belonged to me. I'll never forget the look on Olivia's face when the sheriff showed up with the eviction notice. "You can't do this," she screamed, her voice shrill with rage. "This is my house." "Not anymore," I said, standing in the doorway. "You took everything from me, Olivia, and now I'm just taking back what was mine." She was shaking, her hands clenched into fists. "Where am I supposed to go?" she whispered, eyes desperate. I tilted my head. "I guess you'll have to be independent now." And then, with the sweetest smile I could muster, I handed her one last gift, an old, used bicycle, the same kind my parents gave me for my 16th birthday. I walked back inside and shut the door, leaving her standing there, alone. For the first time in her life, Olivia had no one to fall back on. And for the first time in my life, I was finally free. The house was quiet. For the first time in years, I walked through its halls without feeling like an outsider. No more judgmental stares. No more whispered conversations about how different I was from Olivia. It was mine now, not just legally, but in every way that mattered. Yet, as I stood in the grand living room, surrounded by the expensive furniture and perfectly curated decor, I felt nothing. This place had never been a home to me. It had been a battleground, a symbol of everything I had been denied. And I knew what I had to do next. I put the house on the market the very next day. Not for profit, not for revenge, but because I wanted a clean slate. This house had been Olivia's kingdom, my parents' shrine to their perfect daughter, and I wanted no part of it. I watched from a distance as the for sale sign was hammered into the lawn, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was winning. Olivia, on the other hand, wasn't faring so well. I heard from mutual acquaintances that she was struggling. Connor had won full custody, and without him to bankroll her lifestyle, things unraveled fast. The last time I saw her, she was renting a cramped apartment on the outskirts of town, working a low-level job she despised. And for once, there was no safety net, no parents to bail her out, no adoring social circle to prop her up. She was finally living the kind of life she had always looked down on. But the funny thing? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty either. I just felt done. The money I received from my parents' estate? I donated most of it. Not out of spite, but because I had built my life without their help, and I didn't need their wealth to define me. I kept enough to start over somewhere new. A different city. A different life. One where I wasn't Mandy, the forgotten daughter. Just Mandy. A week before I left town, Aunt Marlene invited me over for dinner. She had been the only relative who truly stood by me throughout everything. As we sat at the table, she reached for my hand. "You know," she said, smiling softly, "your parents were wrong about you." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "They always thought you were the one who didn't need them, that you were too strong, too independent. But the truth is, they needed you." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She sighed. "They built their entire world around Olivia because she needed to be propped up. She needed their validation, their money, their constant approval. But you thrived despite them, and that scared them." The words settled deep inside me. Maybe she was right. Maybe my parents had never ignored me because I wasn't good enough. Maybe they ignored me because they knew I didn't need them the way Olivia did. And for the first time, that thought didn't hurt. That night, as I packed the last of my things, I took one last look around my old room. The girl who used to live here, the one who spent years trying to prove she was worthy, was gone. In her place was a woman who had nothing left to prove. I picked up my bags, walked out the door, and never looked back. Because my past didn't define me. My future did. I never imagined my own parents would one day look me in the eye and tell me my children weren't welcome in their home. Yet, there I was, standing in my kitchen, staring at my phone in disbelief. Thanksgiving was just a few weeks away, and my mom's voice was unusually light as she spoke. Honey, we need to talk about Thanksgiving this year. My heart warmed for a moment. For all the tension that had existed between us over the years, I still longed for these family traditions. My kids, Emma and Lucas, adored their grandparents despite the distance that had formed. Of course, Mom. What's the plan? I asked, already picturing the way their house would be filled with the smell of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and the warmth of a family gathering. There was a brief pause, just long enough to send a chill down my spine. Well, Mom continued, clearing her throat. This year, we're doing things a little differently. It's going to be a smaller dinner. Just adults, something more intimate. I frowned. Oh, so no kids at all? Another pause. Then, more hesitantly, well, no, not exactly. A cold knot twisted in my stomach. What do you mean? Mom let out a sigh, as if she were the one being put in an uncomfortable position. Allie, we love your kids, we really do, but they're a bit, energetic. And honestly, we just feel like it would be better if you left them with a sitter this year. I gripped the edge of the counter. So, just my kids? What about Daniel's? Daniel, my older brother. The golden child. The one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes even when he did. Mom hesitated, and that's when I knew. Daniel and Sophie are coming with their boys, she admitted. But you know how well behaved they are, Allie. They're just quieter, more refined. It's easier to have them at the table. A wave of heat flushed through me. I felt like I had been slapped, like the floor had suddenly been pulled out from under me. They're just children, I said, my voice tight. Emma is 7, and Lucas is 4. Of course they have energy. But they're sweet, and they love you. We're just trying to have a peaceful evening, Mom replied, her tone clipped now, irritated that I wasn't just accepting this. It's not personal, Allie. Not personal. I clenched my jaw, swallowing back the sharp words fighting to spill out. It wasn't just about Thanksgiving. It was the way they had always treated my children like an afterthought while putting Daniel's boys on a pedestal. The way they showed up at their school plays but never came to Emma's dance recitals. The way Christmas gifts were always just a little extra for Daniel's kids. And now, they weren't even hiding it. I can't believe this, I whispered. You're actually telling me that my kids aren't welcome, but Daniel's are? Oh, Allie, don't be dramatic. Mom sighed. It's just one dinner. You and Liam are still invited, of course. I almost laughed at the absurdity. They wanted me there, but not the two people I loved most in this world. I swallowed hard. No, Mom. If my kids aren't welcome, then neither am I. A long silence stretched between us. Then Mom exhaled sharply, as if I were the one being unreasonable. Suit yourself. And just like that, she hung up. I stood there, staring at the phone, my breath unsteady. I could hear my kids in the next room, giggling as they built a pillow fort, oblivious to the fact that their grandparents, the ones they adored, had just cast them aside like an inconvenience. I took a deep breath, my mind racing. I'd spent my whole life trying to please my parents, trying to earn their approval. But at what cost? And if I let them get away with this? If I went to that dinner while my children sat at home wondering why they weren't good enough? What kind of mother would that make me? I wasn't doing this anymore. They had made their choice. Now, it was time for me to make mine. And they would regret it sooner than they thought. The weight of my mother's words lingered long after the call ended. I stood in my kitchen, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. My phone still clutched in my hand. My fingers trembled as I set it down, my heart pounding with a mixture of anger and sadness. I had always known my parents favored Daniel, but I had convinced myself that it wasn't as bad as it seemed, that deep down they loved all of us equally. But tonight, they had ripped away any illusion of fairness. They didn't even try to hide it anymore. They loved his children more. A sudden laugh, pure, carefree, echoed from the living room. I turned to see Emma and Lucas still playing in their pillow fort, completely unaware of the rejection that had just taken place. My chest tightened. They deserved better. I squared my shoulders and walked into the living room, forcing a smile. "All right, you two," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Who's ready for movie night?" Lucas immediately perked up. "Can we watch the one with the talking dog?" I scooped him up into my arms, kissing his soft curls. "Of course we can, buddy." But as we curled up on the couch, the anger inside me refused to settle. I had spent years trying to fit into my parents' world, playing by their rules, hoping that if I just did everything right, they would finally see me as equal to Daniel. But it had never been enough, and I was done trying. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my brother, Daniel. "Mom said you're being difficult about Thanksgiving. Why do you always have to make everything so dramatic?" I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Of course, she had already run to him. Me. "Oh, so she told you she uninvited my kids, but invited yours?" The typing bubbles appeared, then stopped. A minute passed before he finally responded. "Daniel. She just wants a calm dinner, Allie. You know how your kids can be a lot. A lot. Like they were a burden. Like they were something to be tolerated, not loved." Something inside me snapped. Me. "Enjoy your perfect Thanksgiving, Daniel. I won't be there." I turned off my phone before he could respond. They didn't want me or my children at their table? Fine. I wouldn't be part of their world at all. And they were about to find out what that really meant. For years, I had been the reliable one, the one who always helped when they needed something. When my parents needed someone to pick up their groceries, they called me. When their Wi-Fi stopped working, I was the one who drove over to fix it. When they wanted help organizing a family party, I was the one stuck making calls and running errands. And Daniel? He got to be the golden child, doing the bare minimum while reaping all the rewards. But if I wasn't part of their preferred family, then they weren't going to benefit from me anymore. A week before Thanksgiving, my mother called again. I debated ignoring it, but finally answered. "Hello?" "Allie," she said, her tone cautious. "I just wanted to check in. I know you were upset, but I really hope you'll reconsider. We would love to have you and Liam there." "Not you and the kids. Just you and Liam." I took a deep breath. "I meant what I said, Mom. If my kids aren't welcome, neither am I." She sighed heavily, as if I were exhausting her. "I just don't understand why you're being so stubborn. It's just one night. You know how much Daniel's boys mean to us." And there it was. The final, painful confirmation that my children, the two little humans I loved more than anything, would never be enough for her. I clenched my jaw. "You've made it clear where we stand, Mom. I won't bother you again." "Allie, don't be like this." I ended the call before she could finish, and this time I didn't cry. I started small. When my dad called me that weekend to help him set up his new TV, I let the call go to voicemail. When my mom sent a text asking if I could pick up her prescription, I left it unread. For years, I had been at their beck and call. Always available, always reliable, but not anymore. And it didn't take long for them to notice. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, I had missed a total of 12 calls and ignored 6 texts. Then, on the morning of Thanksgiving, I got a message from Daniel. "Daniel, Mom and Dad are really upset that you're ignoring them. Are you seriously going to let this go this far?" Me. It already went too far when they told me my kids weren't welcome. This time he didn't reply. I put my phone on silent and turned my attention to my real family. Emma and Lucas were at the table, helping Liam mix pancake batter. They were covered in flour, laughing hysterically. This was our Thanksgiving, and for the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. But little did I know, my parents weren't done yet, and their next move would be something I'd never forgive. Thanksgiving morning was peaceful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. No rushing to get the kids dressed in their best clothes, no stress over making the perfect side dish, no anxious glances at the clock to make sure we weren't late. Instead, we were in our own little world. Our home filled with laughter, the smell of pancakes and maple syrup hanging in the air. Emma and Lucas took turns stirring the batter while Liam flipped the pancakes with exaggerated skill, making them giggle every time he almost dropped one. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again. And then again. Liam shot me a concerned look. Want me to turn it off? I hesitated, then shook my head. Number, if it's an emergency, I should at least know. I swiped to answer, keeping my voice flat. What is it, Mom? Oh, now you pick up, she huffed. I suppose you're just sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself while we're all here having a lovely dinner. I sighed. Mom, if you called to gloat, I really don't have time. That's not why I called. Her voice turned sharp. I need to ask you something. I pinched the bridge of my nose. What now? Did you cancel the credit card? The room suddenly felt very still. I turned away from Liam and lowered my voice. What are you talking about? Your father's credit card. The one we've been using for groceries, gas, essential things. It was declined this morning. A slow, icy realization crept up my spine. The credit card she was talking about wasn't theirs. It was mine. Years ago, when Dad was recovering from surgery and money was tight, I had added them as authorized users on my account temporarily, just to help them through a rough patch. I had meant to remove them when they got back on their feet, but life got busy, and I had forgotten. And they had never reminded me. I clenched my jaw. You mean my credit card? A pause. Then Mom scoffed. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Allie. It's just a card. You make good money, and we figured... You figured what? My voice was shaking now. That you'd just keep using my money? That I wouldn't notice? Oh, don't act like this is some big betrayal. We raised you. The least you could do is support us now. I inhaled sharply. Are you serious? After telling me my kids weren't good enough to come to Thanksgiving, you still expected me to keep paying for your groceries? Are you even hearing yourself? Mom let out a long, dramatic sigh. You know what, Allie? This is exactly why we don't like having difficult conversations with you. You always overreact. Overreact. I was done. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice dangerously calm. I did cancel the card. And since we're having honest conversations now, let me make something very clear. You won't see another cent from me. Ever. Mom gasped, as if I had slapped her. Allie, don't be ridiculous. I cut her off. And while we're at it, don't expect Christmas gifts, birthday gifts, or anything else either. You made your choice when you told me my kids weren't welcome. And now I'm making mine. Silence. Then, in a voice colder than I'd ever heard from her, she said, You'll regret this. And then she hung up. For a moment, I just stood there, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. Then, slowly, I turned back toward the kitchen. Liam was watching me carefully. Everything okay? I forced a small smile. Yeah, I said, voice steadier than I felt. Just taking out the trash. He didn't ask any more questions. We spent the rest of the day in our own Thanksgiving, watching movies, baking cookies, playing board games. And for the first time in years, there was no underlying stress. No need to walk on eggshells. No pressure to be someone I wasn't. But as peaceful as it was, something told me this wasn't over. And I was right. Because my parents weren't just going to let their golden source of money walk away. And their next move would prove exactly what kind of people they really were. The silence from my parents didn't last long. 3 days after Thanksgiving, my phone lit up with an incoming call. Daniel. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity got the best of me. I exhaled sharply and answered. What do you want? What the hell, Allie? He snapped, skipping any pleasantries. Mom just called me in tears saying you cut them off. What is wrong with you? I closed my eyes, pinching the bridge of my nose. Did she also tell you that they've been using my credit card for years without my knowledge? A pause. Well, she said you were helping them out. Helping them out? I let out a humorless laugh. Daniel, they've racked up thousands of dollars on my account, without asking, while treating my kids like garbage. But sure, let's act like I'm the bad guy here. He sighed, clearly trying to control his frustration. Look, I get that you're mad, but cutting them off completely? That's extreme. You mean the way they completely excluded my children from Thanksgiving? I shot back. They just wanted a peaceful evening, Allie. Mom said your kids can be a little wild. My grip on the phone tightened. Oh, I see. So they can use my money, but my kids aren't good enough for their table? Got it. He groaned. You're twisting this. No, Daniel, I'm finally seeing it for what it is. There was a long pause. Then his voice turned calculating. Look, maybe we can work something out. What if you just kept helping them but set limits? Like a smaller monthly transfer? That way, no one has to suffer over a misunderstanding. A cold laugh bubbled up in my throat. Let me get this straight. You want me to keep sending them money after they literally told me they love your kids more than mine? They didn't mean it like that, he grumbled. They said it, Daniel. He had no response for that. After a moment, his voice turned stiff. Fine. If you want to be selfish, that's on you. But don't expect Mom and Dad to forgive you anytime soon. I smirked, shaking my head. I'll survive. Then, before he could argue, I hung up. For the next few weeks, my parents played the silent treatment game. No calls, no texts. I figured they were hoping I'd cave, come crawling back, begging for their approval like I always had. But what they didn't realize was that for the first time in my life, I didn't need it anymore. And just when I thought they'd finally given up, they pulled one last, desperate stunt. It was the week before Christmas when the letter arrived. Liam found it in the mailbox, his brow furrowing as he read the sender's name. It's from your parents. I stiffened. Oh, great. Let me guess. Guilt, manipulation, or straight-up gaslighting? He smirked. Why don't we find out? I took the envelope, my stomach twisting as I tore it open. Inside was a formal legal document. My breath caught as I read the words. They were demanding reimbursement for years of emotional and financial support. I let out a disbelieving laugh. You've got to be kidding me. Liam took the letter, scanning it quickly. They're saying you owe them for raising you and for all the financial sacrifices they made for your well-being. He looked up, jaw tightening. Are they actually trying to bill you for your own childhood? Apparently they were. They had even included itemized costs, things like food, clothes, school supplies, medical expenses, from when I was a child. And at the bottom of the page, a final sum. $78,542. I blinked. They seriously think I'm going to give them nearly 80 grand? Liam scoffed. They must be desperate. I exhaled slowly, anger burning through me. This wasn't about money. This was control. A final, desperate attempt to pull me back into their grip. I looked at Liam, my mind already made up. I think it's time I pay them a little visit. The next day, I drove to my parents' house, gripping the letter in my hands. I knocked, and when Mom opened the door, her face immediately hardened. Oh, so now you show up. I didn't rise to the bait. I held up the letter. You seriously thought this would work? She folded her arms. It's what's fair. I let out a sharp laugh. Fair? You want to charge me for being your child while expecting free money from me for the rest of your lives? Dad appeared in the doorway, his expression smug. We sacrificed a lot for you, Allie, and now you're abandoning us. I stared at them, shaking my head. No, Dad, you abandoned me when you made it clear that my kids weren't good enough, when you lied and stole from me, when you put a price tag on my worth. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. If you don't want to pay, then I guess we'll have to involve lawyers. I met her gaze, unfazed. Go ahead. She blinked. What? I crossed my arms. Take me to court. Try to explain to a judge why you're suing your own daughter for expenses from 20 years ago. See how that goes. Silence. For the first time, they looked unsure. Dad cleared his throat. We just thought you'd want to make things right. I laughed. Oh, I am making things right. Right now. I ripped the letter in half, watching their eyes widen. I am done being your personal ATM. Mom gasped. You ungrateful little... I turned on my heel. Merry Christmas, I called over my shoulder, striding back to my car. And for the first time in my life, I felt lighter. As I drove away, I realized something. They weren't upset about the money. They were upset because for the first time ever, I had all the power. And I wasn't giving it back. I thought that after ripping up their ridiculous demand for money, my parents would finally back off. That maybe, just maybe, they would sit in the wreckage of their own arrogance and realize that they had pushed me too far. But people like them? They don't change. They just escalate. It started small. A text from Mom 2 days before Christmas. Mom, Allie, this is ridiculous. We're family. You don't turn your back on family over a silly argument. I ignored it. The next day, another message. Mom, we forgive you. Come to Christmas dinner and we'll forget this ever happened. I almost laughed. They forgive me? Then, a few hours later, one from Daniel. Daniel. They're really hurting, Allie. Just apologize so we can move on. I rolled my eyes. Of course, in his world, I was the one who had done something wrong. I typed out a response. Me. Funny. They weren't hurting when they were stealing from me, or when they told me my kids weren't welcome. I think they'll survive. I hit send and blocked his number. Then Christmas Eve arrived. Liam and I had just put the finishing touches on the tree, and Emma and Lucas were in their pajamas, dancing around the living room, too excited to sleep. It was perfect. And then the doorbell rang. Liam and I exchanged a look. No way, he muttered. I walked to the door and peered through the peephole. Sure enough, Mom and Dad. I considered ignoring them, but then I spotted what they were holding. A giant, beautifully wrapped box. I sighed and opened the door. What do you want? Mom's face lit up with forced cheerfulness. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. Dad held out the gift. For the kids. I folded my arms. No thanks. Mom's smile wavered. Allie, don't be stubborn. Let's not ruin Christmas over this. You already ruined Christmas, I shot back. When you told me my children weren't good enough for your table. Remember that? Her mouth opened, then closed. Dad sighed. Come on, Allie, let's just be a family again. I stared at them, feeling nothing but exhaustion. You don't want to be a family, I said quietly. You want me to go back to being useful. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. I shook my head. Take your gift and go. Mom's expression hardened. Allie, don't be selfish. Think about the children. I smiled coldly. I am thinking about the children. That's exactly why you're not in their lives anymore. Dad's jaw tightened. You really want to do this? I exhaled. I already did. And with that, I shut the door in their faces. That night, we had the best Christmas ever. Emma and Lucas tore into their presents, their laughter echoing through the house. We drank hot cocoa, played board games, and watched Christmas movies until they fell asleep on the couch. And for the first time in my life, Christmas wasn't about trying to prove myself. It was about us. Real family. Chosen family. The kind that doesn't come with conditions. The kind that doesn't make you earn love. The kind that loves you because they want to, not because they expect something in return. I thought that was the end of it. That after being cut off financially, humiliated at Christmas, and rejected at my front door, my parents would finally accept that I was done. But I underestimated just how much control they thought they still had over me. Because New Year's Eve, they did something I never saw coming. New Year's Eve was supposed to be a fresh start, a night to leave the past behind and step into a better future. That's what I told myself as I set up the snack table, laughter and music filling our home. Emma and Lucas were buzzing with excitement, running around in their little party hats, counting down the hours until midnight. Liam was pouring champagne for us, a soft smile on his face. It was our night, our celebration. And then, the knock. I froze, my stomach twisting. Liam glanced at me. "You think?" I already knew. I walked to the door, took a deep breath, and opened it. And there they were. Mom, Dad, Daniel, and Daniel's wife, Sophie. It was an ambush. I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" Mom smiled, but it was the same forced, sugary tone she always used when she wanted something. "We just want to talk." "No thanks," I said flatly. Dad sighed. "Allie, enough. You've made your point. Now let's fix this before things go too far." I narrowed my eyes. Too far? What does that even mean? Mom exchanged a look with Daniel. "We just don't want this to affect the kids." Something about her tone made my skin crawl. "What are you talking about?" Daniel stepped forward, arms crossed over his chest like he was the one who had been wronged. "Mom and Dad have been talking to a lawyer." A cold wave of dread rolled through me. "A lawyer?" I repeated slowly. Mom nodded, her eyes gleaming with false sympathy. "We're just worried, Allie. You've cut your children off from their real family over a silly misunderstanding. That's not fair to them." I felt my pulse pound. "What are you trying to say?" Dad cleared his throat. "We've been looking into grandparents' rights." For a moment, all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Then, I laughed. It wasn't a small chuckle. It was loud, unhinged, and sharp. They thought they could legally force their way back into my life? Into my kids' lives? Daniel's face twisted. "What's so funny?" I wiped my eyes. "Oh, you're serious? You think any judge is going to look at this situation and side with you?" Mom's lips pressed together. "We've done nothing wrong." "Nothing wrong?" I repeated, stepping forward. "You stole from me. You treated my kids like second-class citizens. And now, because I finally cut you off, you think you can bully your way back in?" Dad's face darkened. "You don't want to do this, Allie." I met his glare with a smile. "Oh, but I do." I pulled out my phone and held it up. "I want you to think real carefully about what you're about to do," I said, voice cold. "Because I've got every text, every voicemail, every demand for money, and I promise you, if you try this, I will bury you." Sophie gasped. "Allie, come on." "No," I snapped, eyes locked on my parents. "You have no case. You know it. I know it. And if you keep pushing me, I will make sure that everyone you know sees exactly who you really are." A beat of silence. Then Mom's face twisted in anger. "You're being unreasonable." I smiled. "No, Mom. I'm finally being smart." I stepped back into my house and grabbed the door. "Happy New Year," I said sweetly. Then I slammed the door in their faces. They never went through with their pathetic legal threat. They knew they had nothing. They knew they had lost. In the weeks that followed, I didn't hear from them. Not a text, Not a call. Nothing. And for the first time in my life, it felt like freedom. The weight of their expectations? Gone. The pressure to please them? Gone. The endless cycle of guilt and manipulation? Gone. Months later, on a sunny spring afternoon, I was sitting on the porch watching Emma and Lucas chase bubbles in the yard. Liam handed me a lemonade and sat beside me. "It's been quiet." I nodded. "Yeah, feels good." He smirked. "Think they'll ever try again?" I sipped my drink, watching my kids giggle as they popped the bubbles. Doesn't matter. Because I had already won. I had my kids, my real family, and I'd never let anyone make them feel unwanted again.